Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I have something a little different for you. I want to talk about these freebies that are over and available on my blog. I've got all different kinds SVGs, but right now I want to focus on these vintage inspired freebies, the more flashcard inspired, and I want to show you how I use them and make them more like a true flashcard. So if you'll notice, I have started something new. It's called Freebie Friday, and every Friday I just post something that's for free over on my blog. It differs all the time. It might be a digital stamp set, it might be a sticker sheet, paper pack, all different kinds of things. But what I've been posting a lot of, because I can't post it all on my blog as I'm doing videos, it's just too much, are these vintage freebies. And I use them in my vintage journaling. You can find these a few different places on my blog. You can scroll through the posts and see them. I also have a freebie tabs up top. All you do is you open up whichever freebie it is. You right click or two finger click if you're on a Mac like I am here, and just either open in a new tab and save from there, or you can just save image as. And that's all you do. They're 300 DPI, very easy to print. But these number cards are the ones that have been posted the last few weeks. I also have some of these lantern slides, gardening in color. I think there's 5 of those. These are a lot of fun. You can do the same thing with these that I'm doing with some domino cigarette cards that I posted a few weeks ago. So you can see, you can zoom in really well, really high quality, so you can print very easily. These I opened in a new tab. Again, same thing, right click on the image or double click if you're on a Mac, and you just save as. Very, very simple to do. So like I said, a few weeks ago, I posted a full set of domino cigarette cards. Now, these are pretty great. I don't know if anybody else grew up playing dominoes, but it's something I did grow up playing. Anytime I went to my mom's parents' house, my grandparents on that side, they loved to play dominoes. So I learned how to play at a really fun age. I've taught my kids how to play. It's just a lot of fun. So I printed off all 3 pages and I just cut them out. You can use a paper trimmer, you can use a craft knife and ruler, you can use scissors. It really is up to you. Just get them cut out. And then I have some old packaging. So this is kind of the thickness of a cereal box. Mine is actually like layers in between juices. And then I have my glue. All this is school glue with some water added, distilled water to be exact, just to thin it down. This works great for kind of collaging pieces on, which is essentially what I'm doing here. It's cheap to use, especially right around now. School time, you can get it for cheap, so stock up. And then I just mix it in a little jar, keep the lid on tight. I've had this going for a good 6 to 8 months and it's still just fine. And I use a foam brush. So I'm using really thin layers here. I'm just placing the glue down onto the cardboard / chipboard that I'm using. And then I'm placing my dominoes on top of it in rows. I just want to get as many on here as I possibly can and fill this up with domino cards. Now I should mention too, when I printed those domino sets out, I printed them on regular computer paper. You can print them on heavier cardstock. I tend to just use computer paper because I know I'm going to back mine with this chipboard, and it just makes it a little easier to print that way and cheaper. I also use a laser printer when I'm printing. I'll leave the one I use linked over on my Amazon storefront page. I love it. It's a color laser printer, a little bit more expensive in the beginning, but it saves you in ink. As I am gluing these down, I am making sure I'm using very, very, very thin layers of glue. You don't need a lot because of the textured surface of that chipboard. It's got a pretty good grip anyway. And then once I put these down, I am using the scraper. It came with a clay tool set. I will leave that linked over on Amazon as well. And I just scrape it down, but anything will really work for that, even an old gift card or credit card. And then I just continue to add more glue to this. I'm just putting it on the chipboard, not on the paper itself. and then placing these down right on top until I have the entire chipboard filled up with them. Now, if this chipboard or the packaging isn't something you can get a hold of, you could easily use some thicker cardstock like craft cardstock, or you could use a thicker cardstock and tea dye it as well. Once I have these all on, and I'm happy I can't fit any more on there, I'm just going to use my foam brush and put a thin layer over the top of all of these just to seal them in. This is really going to help those edges stick down when we go to cut out later. So don't skip this step. This is also why I use school glue. It leaves a nice matte finish that's very thin. You can't see it, and it doesn't show brush strokes at all. Obviously, it's going to be a little shiny as it's on there wet, but once it dries, it does dry completely matte, and it is such a thin layer, and it's been watered down that it just smooths out on its own. Now, this is another reason I am using those laser printed images. If you did use an inkjet, I would not suggest going over the top of this. It would probably smear. So here they are, ready to go. Still a little wet. You can tell they're wet when they still have that shine to them. But once they dry, they will be nice and matte, ready to go. There you can see, very thin layer. Now set them aside to dry. This shouldn't take long because the glue we put on was such thin layers. It shouldn't take more than a few hours, or you can just leave them overnight and then you know they're good and dry. Now, once they're dry, it's time to cut them out. This is super simple. Again, use whatever method you're most comfortable with. I like to use a craft knife or an X-Acto blade here in my case. Just a super cheap one that I can kind of knock those edges off and keep it sharp because paper does dull them so fast. And I use my ever loyal Tim Holtz ruler that I probably need a new one of. I've dropped this thing 100 times, glued the metal strip back in, but this thing is a workhorse. I absolutely love it. I do like to use this method just because, one, the blades on these I can just pop off and keep it nice and sharp, whereas my paper trimmer, I feel like I dull the blades really quickly, especially with this thick of a chipboard, and the scissors kind of kill my hand after a little bit. So the craft knife is the way for me. And then any little edges I will just clean up with some scissors or use a sanding block to sand those down if it's a very thin edge. Then I have this whole set ready to go. Now, these are for free over on my blog. These are true vintage cigarette cards. I have the original where you can find them for free. If you want to do something different with them with a different size, you can go download them from their original source. These I created, designed myself. These are number flashcards. They should all be up at this point now, the 3 sets of them. There's 2 black sets and 1 kind of more creamy set. And then this is something new that will be coming if it hasn't already. These are vintage inspired little flashcards. And I have different sets with different categories of words coming up. So here are like my vintage journaling words. I've got some flower sets and color sets. Lots of different things coming up with those. So be on the lookout for those. And as always, they'll always be over on that freebie tabs on my blog. I will leave that linked in the bottom as well, the bottom description. That does it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to come back to the blog every Friday for a new freebie. Happy crafting, everyone.